We are talking about the movie Necronomicon, Book of the Dead, 1993 movie, which I actually used to think was something to do with the Evil Dead franchise being called the Necronomicon, but it isn't. It's nothing to do with that. It's actually an anthology movie, kind of loosely based on H.P. Lovecraft. Now, it's actually got some big names in the horror kind of world. You've got a couple of well-known directors here, Brian Usner, you've got Christoph Gans doing kind of the first kind of episode. And you've also got some big names in regards to kind of actual horror actors as well. For example, Jeffrey Combs actually plays H.P. Lovecraft in the kind of the Wraparound story. You've also got Bruce Payne, of course, you may know from the Warlock 3. You've got Richard Lynch. You have got David Warner. So you do have some kind of recognisable names here in regards to some kind of like character actors, things like that. So what is the actual story here? So like I've said, it's an anthology movie with actually a wraparound. The wraparound stars obviously Jeffrey Combs as H.P. Lovecraft as he's trying to go and discover the secrets of the Necronomicon. Now we're led to believe that there's actually multiple Necronomicons in this kind of story, and his kind of like story, if you like, is going into the secret society and trying to blag a copy of the Necronomicon so he can kind of read its secrets. And whilst he's there, he's kind of reading the stories, which are the three then stories that you will kind of see throughout the movie. So we'll talk about the actual wraparound story first, and then we'll kind of talk about the individual stories. And there's no real connective tissue outside of the book itself. The Necronomicon wraparound story, I've got to say, is quite fun. Jeffrey Combs looks like he's kind of wearing a little bit of prosthetics. And I think he looks a little bit like Colin Fewer, actually, in this movie. It's all weird, because if you know that actor, another character actor who's nothing to do with this film, but he kind of looks a little bit like him. But he's playing H.P. Lovecraft, who almost is like kind of an Indiana Jones style adventurer here. And there's a couple of dealings with some otherworldly monks and potentially a creature. It's a little bit throwaway, to be honest with you, the actual wraparound story. It's fun. Jeffrey Combs is actually quite fun in the role, but the actual narrative itself is relatively throwaway. The first of the three stories is by far and away, in my opinion at least, the strongest. And interestingly, with the three individual stories, two of them actually have an extended flashback in the actual stories. You almost get another story in that story. So the first one, you have Bruce Payne kind of going into this old Gothic house, and he's got his motives for going there, wanting to kind of rediscover this kind of long lost love that was her life was left, lost at sea, and there he kind of is recounting a tale of someone else who used to live there, who kind of tried to bring their loved ones back through the depths, and played by Richard Lynch, and they came back as kind of sea creatures, and obviously this is kind of what happens here. Fantastic special effects in this one, I've got to say. This is the most kind of like Cthulhu-esque style kind of short in this one. You do actually get some kind of like squid-like kind of monsters. I thought they looked. The effects here are absolutely outstanding, and you've got two genre kind of like well-known genre actors in Richard Lynch and Bruce Payne. And Bruce Payne actually has quite a good action sequence where he's trying to escape from this kind of like a large kind of like Cthulhu-esque style creature towards the end of this segment. Lots of fun, this one, very gothic-y, drips kind of like tension and kind of like and this eerie, horrific gothic feel to it. Absolutely brilliant, this particular one. The best one out the three stories. The second story is stars David Warner, and it's about this woman who was there's a reporter going and interviewing this woman, and she's kind of recounting a flashback. So this is the second flashback, and in the bulk of the story, which is the flashback, where you have this young woman who goes to this kind of house, and there's a kind of mysterious doctor that kind of lives upstairs, and he's kind of doing some weird experiments that involves dark magic, obviously. And the doctor is played by David Warner, and it's kind of like trying to a Fountain of Youth style story. But to be honest with you, the narrative here is pretty dull. It's a little bit of a dull movie. There is some gooey effects towards the end, but it's kind of the least horror out of all of them. It almost is more of a sci-fi to a certain degree. It plays like a kind of a forgettable Twilight Zone episode, this particular one. So I didn't think this was too good. And then the final story is about these, which is weird because this guy's H.P. Lovecraft is reading these stories, and this last one is clearly takes place in kind of like a modern era, as does the kind of the middle one really. So I don't know how Lovecraft in I think the early kind of 20th century is reading this, but whatever. The last one involves these two police people, a man and a woman, tracing this guy, and he ends up going in this underground complex, and there's this kind of weird old couple that they come across, and there may be kind of like monstrous shenanigans going on there. This one does have some variable effects. There are some very imaginative effects in this one in regards to kind of like the monster effects, and there's a really like quite gross scene where you have like a guy's kind of hollowed out head. But obviously this being 1993, there is some effects that have aged quite badly. There's kind of like these bat creatures that are kind of flying around, and the flying around effect looks quite bad now, I've got to say. But the actual practical makeup itself is quite good. The issue that I have with this movie, or this sort of film, it's kind of just really silly. And this kind of older couple just outstay their welcome. And then they are integral to the plot, but it's kind of like a comedy one, almost, but with some kind of like fairly graphic gore and stuff. But to me, the joke was really a little bit thin, and I didn't find it really all that interesting. So the first story is definitely worth a watch. This one, that was directed by Christoph Gans, I believe. But the rest of them, outside of some really cool makeup, it's a little bit of a miss. I'm not the biggest Anthology fan, to be honest with you, because I don't like the kind of the lack of characterization. But there are some very impressive effects, nonetheless. So that in mind, even though I think only one of the actual stories is worth a watch, I will give this a 5 out of 10 because there are some very, very good effects on display here. Obviously, with Brian User involved, you're going to expect that. So 5 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.